In this edition, we're going to be looking at the Gearwrench half-inch 33-piece SAE standard and deep mechanics tool set featuring 90-tooth ratchet, off-corner loading, and engraved markings. Inside the box, you'll find a Gearwrench blow case. It has 2 latches, but no handle. Opening it up reveals our 33-piece set, which ranges from 7/16 on the deep sockets all the way up to 1.5 inches, while on the standard size we go from 7/16 all the way up to 1.5 inches. There's a 15-inch flex head drive, 5-inch extension, 3-inch extension, a universal joint, and finally the 1/2-inch drive itself. You'll notice something interesting. On the head it says on and off as opposed to right arrow, left arrow, no markings at all. What this means is if you want to take a fastener off, you turn it to the off position. You want to put that fastener on, put it onto the on position. 90-tooth ratcheting, fairly shallow head. There's no knurling on the handle itself. It is given a color, which the rest of the set does not contain, but all the sockets are engraved with the size. Although it would have been nice had they been painted so they would stand out more, because as you see with the reflection, it's kind of hard to make some of these out. Looking at the finish of the tool, high polished chrome. There are some slight imperfections that I'm seeing, and so it's not perfect, but it's nothing that it's going to affect the way the tool works. You can see along here, there's some defects there, right on that edge, along here. So they didn't do too good of a job on that. But again, what you really care about is the ratcheting mechanism, the pause, and how it holds up. It's a low profile switch. Very smooth. Fairly good grip. No different than some other brands which don't use any knurling whatsoever. Here we can compare heads. This is a 144 from Husky, probably made by Apex. Different sound. This has more of a hollow sound to it when you switch. This actually feels a bit more polished. You'll notice that this has a push button to release. And on this one, you see there's the bearing that would lock the socket in place, but there's no disengage. So basically, you put in your socket and you have to just pull it off, which can be a struggle since it's brand new. Whereas on this head, it goes right on, you push the button, and it comes right off. So that's a downside for this tool, because that would have been an easy thing for them to add, and everyone's pretty much done it these days. Here's another one where the button protrudes, unlike that one where it's flush. But again, the socket goes on easily, you push the button, it comes off easily, and we don't have that with this tool. Let's compare sockets. Here's the Gearwrench, here's a Craftsman. They both have markings on them. They're both kind of hard to see. This one has these 2 engraved lines which let you know that this is an SAE socket. If you had metric, it would be ribbed. Looking at the top, They're both 6-sided. The finish goes all the way down. It's a nice clean plating on this one, all the way down, nice and clean. Not so much with the Craftsman. There's a line that you can probably see about a third of the way down that goes all around, and that's just how well they do the plating. We turn these over. We notice that the bottom is more squared than this one. On the Gearwrench, you can see that the corners have little openings on them. Not sure what that does for the work, but here's a close-up so you can see the difference. The Craftsman on the right is squared off, whereas the Gearwrench is not. Here we're comparing the deep sockets, both 7/8, Craftsman on the right, Gearwrench on the left. You see that the Gearwrench is taller. Again, it has the 2 engraved circular markings to let you know that this is SAE. If we look at the bottom, unfortunately, I don't have a 1/2-inch socket, so the opening's a little smaller. But again, we have the corners that are rounded, whereas they're squared on the Craftsman. Now, if you turn them over, you'll notice something really interesting. This socket goes all the way almost to the bottom. So very long throw for the nut or fastener to travel into. Whereas, while this gives the outward appearance that it goes deep, it actually doesn't. Yes, you could have a long bolt going into here, and that's nice, but the actual nut, if it was a deep nut, could only go about 1/2 inch. So it's just interesting to note that outwardly, this looks like it's the deeper one, but in reality, it's the smaller socket that is. Again, note that the plating goes all the way through, so great job plating on this socket. Here we have a side-by-side comparison of a Husky Universal and the Gearwrench. And pretty much identical in thickness and in finish quality. These are both fairly flush. This plating looks a little bit smoother than this one. I see streaking on that. Let's compare the size of the bearing. Bearing looks like it might be actually a little bit, that locking bearing looks like it could be a little bit thicker. Otherwise, fairly identical. Feel-wise, this is nice and loose. On the Husky, it's a little stiffer. This is very smooth. A little stiff on the Husky. So, I guess, is there play in this? Ever so slight. Same here. So, I think this is just a smoother feeling universal. Again, in use, are you going to notice that this one's just a little stiffer than this? Probably not. If we look at the finish on the inside, they both look really good. So, again, this was probably made by Apex because it's Husky, and some Husky products are made by Apex Tools. But I would say they're on par with each other. No problems there whatsoever. Finally, we're going to compare the 1.5 low profile and the deep socket. Again, very nice finish. You can see the rounded corners as before. The engraved markings, of course, the sizes on them. And then when we look inside, you see that the low profile does go all the way down to the bottom, whereas the deep socket doesn't nearly go as deep. Actually, the low profile will give you a deeper reach onto a fastener than this one will. Just interesting thing to note. I'm surprised that they just didn't continue taking off metal until they got down here somewhere. But now you know. The two extensions have knurling on them, which is nice because, you know, things are greasy and oily. This gives you a sure grip. I would have liked to have seen that on the actual drive and on the flex head drive, but that's not the case. In comparing the ratchet head thickness, we see this Craftsman compared to a Husky, and the Husky is just a little bit thinner. Now, if we go to the Gearwrench, we see that it's substantially thinner. So this could be an advantage when you're trying to get into some cramped spaces. Of course, a good question to ask about the tool case is, does it keep the sockets in place when things get jostled around? And the answer is mostly yes. My impressions of this Gearwrench 33-piece set is that it's a decent set, great finish overall, slight defects on the tool with the finish, but nothing that'll affect its use. My only real issue with this set is the fact that there's no way to disengage a socket once you put it on, making it a bit of a struggle to get off, which could be a big deal when you're underneath a vehicle trying to change sockets on a wrench. And it's a little strange when the deep socket isn't as deep as the regular socket. If those two concerns don't bother you, then this is a decently priced set. You get a nice 15-inch bar, a couple of extensions, universal, so well-rounded. And if you decide to go metric, you'll be able to tell your sockets apart because these are not only engraved with the size, but are also have an engraved line to let you know that this is SAE. If you found this video interesting or useful, give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, join the subscription team, and as always, thank you ever so much for watching.